Rain poured down like the heavens themselves were weeping that evening. The city's streets glistened under the flickering yellow of tired street lamps, and the roar of motorcycle engines echoed through the narrow lanes. The group of bikers, loud, leather-clad, fierce, rode like thunder through the mist, laughing as they cut through puddles. But as they slowed at a traffic signal near the marketplace, one of them noticed something that made his laughter die in his throat. There, under the dim light of a flickering signboard, stood a small, trembling figure, a boy, no older than 10, his oversized shirt soaked through, clutching a rusted bicycle almost half his height. His lips quivered as he called out in a frail, breaking voice, "Sir, please, buy my bike. Mommy hasn't eaten in 2 days. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of humanity, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your small act of love helps spread stories that remind the world, compassion still exists." The bikers exchanged uneasy looks. The leader of the group, a man named Arav, known in the city for his rough nature and cold heart, removed his helmet slowly. The rain dripped from his beard as he stared at the boy, unsure what to say. The boy's tiny hands were trembling, his knuckles white as he gripped the bicycle handles like it was the last thing in the world he owned. His clothes clung to his thin frame, and the desperation in his eyes cut deeper than any blade. Arav crouched down, his voice low. "Why are you selling your bike, kid?" The boy swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. "Mommy, she's sick. She hasn't eaten in 2 days. I tried to get work, but no one wants to hire a boy." Behind him, the other bikers shifted awkwardly. They were used to chaos, street fights, late-night rides, noise, adrenaline, but not this. Not a hungry child offering his only joy for the sake of his mother. Arav looked around. The market was nearly empty, only a few vendors packing up their stalls. The boy stood out, small, fragile, and drenched. Something inside Arav stirred, something buried deep beneath layers of scars and indifference. He asked where the boy lived, but the child hesitated, afraid. Finally, he pointed toward the old railway quarters, a place most people avoided after dark. Arav sighed, told his friends to follow, and the group of roaring bikers followed a barefoot child through the maze of wet alleys and broken walls. They reached a crumbling building, its windows shattered, its walls blackened by years of neglect. The boy led them up a narrow staircase, each step creaking under their boots. When they entered the small room, the air was heavy with dampness and silence. On a torn mat in the corner lay a woman, pale and motionless, her face gaunt, her hands clutching her stomach weakly. The boy ran to her, kneeling beside her, whispering, "Mommy, I brought help." The woman opened her eyes just enough to see him, and the group of strangers behind. Shame flickered across her face as she tried to sit up, murmuring apologies for the mess. Arav felt something twist inside him. He had seen hunger before, but never like this, never wrapped in so much dignity. He sent one of his men to get food and medicine. Within half an hour, steaming containers and bottles of water filled the small room. The boy's eyes widened as his mother took her first sip of broth. She tried to thank them, but her voice broke. Arav told her to rest. As they left the room that night, rain still falling outside, none of the bikers spoke. For once, the engines roared quietly, as if even the machines understood the weight of what they had witnessed. Over the next few days, Arav couldn't shake the image of that boy, the trembling voice, the tiny bicycle, the pleading eyes. He had seen plenty in his life, betrayal, loss, pain, but something about that night lingered. He returned to the railway quarters again with some groceries. The boy, who introduced himself as Ravi, smiled shyly when he saw him. His mother, Mina, was recovering slowly, her face now showing a bit of color. She thanked Arav with tears in her eyes, saying, "You saved us, sir." "We had nothing left," Arav asked gently. "What happened?" Her eyes filled with sorrow as she told her story. Her husband had been a factory worker, a kind man who worked overtime to give their son a better future. But one evening, there was an accident at the factory, a machine malfunctioned, and he was gone in seconds. The company refused compensation, claiming it was his own fault. Mina tried to fight for justice, but without money or power, her voice was silenced. The factory belonged to one of the city's richest businessmen, a man untouchable by law. Soon, debt collectors came knocking, taking away everything, their home, their furniture, even the small scooter her husband had left behind. They had moved to the railway quarters, surviving on little more than hope. Arav's hands clenched into fists as he listened. He asked for the name of the businessman. When Meena whispered it, Arav froze. He knew that name, it belonged to Mr. Sinha, the same man who had ruined Arav's own life years ago. Before he became a biker, Arav had been a mechanic at one of Sinha's garages. He had worked hard, saving to open his own workshop, but when Sinha found out, he had fired him and destroyed his reputation with lies. Arav lost everything: his job, his home, his dignity. That was the day he turned cold and joined the streets. Now, standing in that broken home, watching a starving widow and her brave little boy, Arav realized that Sinha's greed had destroyed yet another family. Something inside him snapped. He swore to make things right. Over the following week, Arav and his biker group gathered information. They discovered that the factory where Meena's husband had died was still operational, and still covering up safety violations. Arav decided to confront Sinha, but he knew violence wasn't the answer this time. He needed proof. With help from a few friends in the media, he managed to obtain hidden footage from inside the factory, videos showing unsafe equipment, injured workers, and records that had been falsified to avoid paying compensation. Arav took the evidence to a local journalist who had a reputation for fighting corruption. Within days, the story went public. News channels flashed the headlines: "Factory owner exploits workers, deaths covered up for years." Sinha's empire trembled under public outrage. For the first time, the law couldn't ignore the truth. Compensation funds were released for the affected families, and justice, long delayed, began to move. When Arav told Meena the news, she broke down in tears, her hands trembling as she clasped his. "You didn't just help us," she whispered. "You gave us back our dignity." Ravi, standing beside her, smiled shyly, holding a packet of schoolbooks Arav had bought for him. The boy's bicycle, once a symbol of desperation, was now repaired, shining in the sunlight, its tires new, its bell ringing bright. Arav told him, "Keep this bike, kid. Don't ever sell it again. It's your first ride toward a better life." But destiny wasn't done weaving its quiet miracles. A few weeks later, Arav's biker group, once feared as street rebels, began gaining attention for something new. People started calling them the Guardians on Wheels. They used their rides to deliver food to slum areas, help stranded travelers, and raise funds for those in need. What had begun as an encounter in the rain had turned into a movement of compassion. Arav's hardened image began to change. He found peace in helping others, something he'd forgotten was possible. One evening, Ravi and his mother invited Arav to dinner. Their small home was brighter now: a few new utensils, a small stove, a curtain over the window. Meena had started sewing clothes for neighbors, earning enough to stand on her own. The smell of simple food filled the air, but to Arav, it was a feast. Ravi proudly showed him his school notebooks, saying he wanted to become an engineer one day, to fix machines safely so no one else's father would die. Arav smiled, his eyes glistening as he said, "You will, kid. I believe in you." As the night grew quiet, Meena looked at Arav and said softly, "God sent you to us that night. If you hadn't stopped, we might not be here today." Arav shook his head slowly. "No, ma'am, it wasn't me, it was your son's courage. He didn't give up, even when the world turned away." And in that moment, Arav realized something profound: sometimes the smallest voices, trembling with fear, carry the greatest strength. A little boy's plea had awakened humanity in a man who thought he'd lost it forever. The next morning, the biker group organized a charity ride through the city, raising awareness for worker safety and child hunger. Hundreds joined them, carrying banners that read, "Ride for Hope," and "Kindness is Power." Among the riders was Ravi, sitting proudly on Arav's bike, his laughter echoing through the streets. The boy who once begged strangers to buy his rusted bicycle was now riding toward a brighter future, one fueled not by pity, but by compassion and courage. Sometimes, all it takes is one moment of humanity to change the course of many lives. One small act of kindness can ignite a chain reaction that reaches further than we can ever imagine. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep sharing stories that remind people the world can still be beautiful, even in its darkest corners. Speech balloon before you go, comment below, what would you have done if you were in Arav's place that night in the rain? As the sun set over the city, Arav watched the golden light wash over the streets, the engines of his biker brothers humming beside him. He thought about the night he met Ravi, the trembling boy with the broken bicycle, and smiled. Life had come full circle. He had set out to fix a broken world and found that, in doing so, he had repaired the most broken part of all, his own heart. And somewhere, in a small room near the railway tracks, a mother whispered a silent prayer of gratitude for a stranger who had stopped when no one else did. Because sometimes, the greatest revolutions begin not with power, but with kindness.